Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. This week, we have an awesome guest, Becca, who's the host of a podcast herself. She is a Park City-based snowboarder. She works for Park City and was a really awesome person to have on the podcast. My co-host, Naveed, flew out to Salt Lake while I was out here skiing. We got an awesome few days of skiing. We sat down with Becca and talked about the ski industry, the outdoor industry. We talked about the lack of support for women in the ski industry. We talked about a lot of kind of deep topics, mental health and travel. This was a really fun episode, and I hope you guys enjoy. Welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. I'm your host, Austin Becker, and this is your home for adventure, travel, addiction, recovery, the outdoor and ski industry, and of course, redemption. Hello, everyone. Episode 7, Falling Off the Floor podcast. Today, we actually have a fellow podcaster on with us. Miss Becca here, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, what do you want to know? It's a broad question.
Let's hear everything. What do you
start at day one?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Start at day 1.
So I was born no.
At what time were you born?
Actually 8:51.
Wow, you actually know that.
Because I wanted to look up my astrology and human design charts.
Okay.
Just saying. Yeah, so I'm Becca. I'm from Bend, Oregon. I moved to Park City about 2 months ago, and I work in the ski industry, but I snowboard. Just want to clarify for everyone, and I choose to snowboard. And I've had a podcast for the last 2 years. Started it when I was traveling in Spain, and it's focused on women and, well, actually not so much women anymore, just outdoors and athletics. And yeah, it's kind of me.
What inspired you to start the podcast?
I was just having really good conversations with people outside. I was with my friends, and we would be on the chairlift, or we'd be at the top of a mountain after a really long hike, and yeah, we were just having really good, deep conversations. And I was like, why don't we record this? Like, why don't? And at that time, like in my mind, I didn't know about podcasting very much.
Yeah.
So. What about you guys? What inspired this podcast?
Story behind that.
That's a loaded question.
I think it started like last year, actually. Like, you know, amongst the friend group that we have right now, it was last year when we came to Utah. We were on a road trip, and we were on the road trip. We were talking, like, you know, getting to know, because still, like, you know, that friend group was fresh, like, you know, like getting like built, and we were hearing about like all the crazy stories that like Austin has gone through, and we were like, oh my gosh, like we gotta start a podcast. Well, actually Daniel was like, you gotta do stand up.
Yeah, that's actually where this whole idea came from. My buddy Daniel was like, dude, you have got to do stand up comedy. And I was like, nah, like stand up comedy is not for me. I'm like a humorous person, and I can crack jokes among like friends and stuff, but getting up in front of a crowd and like cracking jokes, not my jam. So everyone was like, you should just start a podcast then and start talking about all of this craziness. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where the idea started. I met Naveed in a really weird way. I call it Tinder for tennis.
Love that.
Yeah. So Tinder for Tennis, also just known as Rally Tennis, is an app in Denver where like tennis players get connected. And Naveed and I are big tennis players, and we got like matched to play. So we play the match.
It's a cool app.
Yeah, it's a cool app. We get matched. I kick his ass, and I'm like, this guy. Don't need to play with this guy again. I don't talk to this guy for like another year.
Yeah,
then
we
randomly
didn't talk, like it was like 2 years ago. Like we didn't talk for a whole year, whole ski season when it came and went. Didn't even know he skied at that time. I didn't know any of his story, but just like knew of him.
Your ego was like too bruised.
Yeah,
to
probably.
hang out.
Bruised ego for sure.
I gotta train and come back and beat his ass. That I can talk.
Well, now he's kicking my ass in tennis because I am back skiing more than I play tennis. But anyways, we connect on the app. And then like a year later, a mutual friend of ours who was also a tennis player was like, do you know anyone that can play doubles with us? And I was like, I know this one Bengali dude. I'll see what I'll shoot some texts out. And I call him the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Yeah.
Why?
Well, he's a very prominent man in Bangladesh. I know nothing about Bangladesh.
But he only knows there's no presidency. There's a prime minister. And I told him that information. Prime minister.
It's like he's latched onto that one thing.
Yeah.
He's like, that's it.
That's it. That's all I know about the country. No, he's taught me a lot about Bangladesh. I would actually love to visit that country someday. But yeah, we connected, played that match of tennis, and he mentioned that he snowboarded. And at that point, I had basically quit skiing. I was like done. I'd had enough. Like the injury, the competing, everything led me to a point that I was like done with skiing. And this guy was like, dude, you just got to get a pass. Like, just come ski. And I was like,
you gotta set the scene up. So I invite him to a doubles match this time with two of my other like South Asian friends, and he's the only white dude there.
Oh, that's
right.
right.
And we went up to like our friend's rooftop hot tub.
Oh yeah.
And we just like let's get jump in the hot tub
about
of the tennis, and then like convince the shit out of him. Like,
we're like looking out. We're like looking out at the snow-capped mountains on this like beautiful rooftop, like. Super bougie apartment in Denver, and they're like, you could be skiing that, man. And I was like, God. And there was like 2 days left to buy an Icon Pass, like with their whole deal system or whatever. You got to buy before this date.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, whatever. I buy the pass. Thank God I did. Last year was the most legendary season like in history.
Oh, okay, that was your first season back.
Yeah, like really back skiing was last year.
Okay.
And I was like actually enjoying myself. And then one of my buddies was like, yo, you got to start like posting this stuff again. Like you got to buy a GoPro and like you got to record this stuff. And I was like, all that world is behind me. Also got convinced, buy the GoPro, start posting. And my like social just like blew up out of like nowhere. And the whole idea of the podcast was just kind of building throughout the season. Like I was meeting his extended friends and like building the ski community. This was like only my second year back in Colorado. And I was finally this summer, I was like, all right, it's time. I'm going to start the podcast. And even then I was like, kind of like, it's time, but I wasn't buying the mics. I wasn't buying the gear. I was just like delaying it. And finally, I didn't even know what it was. Amazon Prime Day in July.
Like that's the day.
That was the day. Amazon Prime Day. I'm like, oh, please look at these deals on mics. Like, come on. So I bought all the gear. This guy is like a wizard with cameras and lighting. And that's actually like another reason we connected. He was a photographer for National Geographic and like traveled the world, and I am a photographer, videographer. Then we launched a separate company together, Mountain Born Media. So that was a very long-winded way of saying that's how Falling Off the Floor podcast started.
Yeah.
Which I don't think we've talked about on the podcast, like how this started.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Well, there you go. That's what I'm here for. I'm curious for you, though. Okay, so you said you broke your back.
Yes.
You broke your spine. So how is skiing, like, how does it look now versus, like, how it looked when you, like, pre-injury, and at this time, so I don't know how long you've been sober.
Yep.
But also, like, the difference between before and after as well.
Yeah. It's funny, this has been in the last week, a very fresh subject. So the accident happened here in Utah. I was at Park City. We went over to the Canyon side. We were like lapping that park chair at Canyons, break my back with a close buddy of mine, John Michael, who I grew up with. John Michael, I have seen in the last like 8 or 9 years, but haven't skied with him. And we just reconnected and skied at Alta like a week ago. And it was so funny because we were like looking back on that, like, whoa, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about it, but we were like, whoa, that's crazy. And we haven't skied together in 10 years. And we like found this line at Alta that we did the week that I broke my back. Had like a little redemption drop on this crazy shoot. But in terms of how my skiing was then and now, so I was a competitive park skier. And that was like my lifeblood. So skiing freestyle was like, if it snowed like in fresh powders on the ground, I was like pissed because that means we can't hit park jumps. And now I look at it and I'm like, what was I thinking? And like 2 days ago, I was riding with some of the guys that ride for Surface, and they're kind of moving away from more park oriented stuff and like moving into more of the like freestyle big mountain scene. And we were chatting about that too, that it was like you kind of just graduate from park skiing into like big mountain skiing. And that is, if you would have asked me 2 days before I broke my back, I would have been like, you're crazy, I'm gonna hit steel until my body falls apart. And sure enough, my body fell apart.
Yeah, you manifested that.
Yeah, I manifested that for sure. Yeah, I graduated to the big mountain scene. Park skiing, like I said, was like my identity. And it's what I did for all those years. And when you like strip that away, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do? So in terms of how my skiing looks now, I broke my back in 2016. I was on the streets doing drugs from really like 2016 all the like for 2 straight years until 2018, and that's when I got sober. So April 18th will be 6 years for me clean and sober.
Wow.
I don't have any like limitations from my injury, which is like crazy.
Yeah.
I was just telling Kristen the other night, like we were talking about like that weird feeling of like when you come out of a surgery and you're loopy and people are like recording you saying crazy things, like when you get your wisdom teeth pulled or whatever. I will actually like never forget that moment. John Michael had gone down in the ambulance with me, and he was like the point of contact for like everyone in my family, like, yo, this is bad. The surgery was double digits in hours, like 10 to 12 hours. And when I came to, John Michael was there and my parents were there, and I'll never like, I don't remember a lot from like those few days because I was heavily concussed as well. People, please wear helmets. I was not wearing a helmet. Yes, I'm sponsored by Pret, so go buy a Pret helmet. They're great.
Plug.
They're great. And Pret has also like saved my head many times this season. I've had a couple of tumbles. But yeah, it like coming to in that moment and like seeing my parents and like good buddy of mine, I just like broke down into tears because that was also the moment that I knew like my life was going to be totally different. I knew I was never going to park ski again. I hit a park jump at Brighton 2 days ago and did a 7, and today hit those park jumps again, and it actually was kind of fun.
Oh my God. This guy. I'm impressed though. Like, are you not terrified? I'd be terrified.
I should be. You know, since getting into like big mountain backcountry skiing, you have to like mitigate your risk tolerance in terms of like avalanche and safety. And my risk tolerance in that aspect has gone down. where I'm aware of like the dangers of the mountains, but man, you put a pair of skis on me in a resort and I don't have that danger. For some reason, my amygdala just doesn't
do that. Yeah.
doesn't do that whole thing.
That's good.
Do that. Yeah. It's probably a terrible thing.
Are you into park skiing at all?
Oh no.
No. Or snowboarding? No.
No. I like kind of lost touch with skiing for a while. Like
Yeah.
I skied from the time I could walk, or I skied till I was 11.
Okay.
Then I switched to snowboarding, and I've snowboarded ever since. But I was a competitive swimmer when I was in high school, and so like you just had meets all the time. Like you can't. That's like swim season is winter. So I like couldn't really snowboard during the weekends. And then I don't know, I went to college and maybe I skied like 3 or 4 times during college.
Yeah.
And then I went on one ski trip when I was abroad. So this is like my first season back, like really getting into it for gosh, like so many years.
Yeah.
And so no, I was into park like a little bit with my brothers because they were really into it. But then my brother broke like his collarbone like twice and his arm, and I was like, you know what? Like I'm cool. Like I can just ski powder days.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So no, not really. But do you have the same passion for snowboarding?
Like big mountain, yeah, but like park or doing anything crazy like that, absolutely not. I would never hit a rail. Like no intention whatsoever for it. I feel like I learned to snowboard pretty late in my life, and I only been snowboarding since my 4th year.
Okay.
So I don't see myself ever doing it. My risk tolerance for the day one was like I can't go in a cast, like what I mean. So I can't do it. So that's why I'm try to keep it very mellow. We like the days like today, that the day we had is like super blower powder day. Those are super fun. Those days probably I send it a little bit harder than like non-powder days, but yeah, just that's kind of the type of riding that I do.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you grew up in Bend. You started skiing at a young age, obviously. What was your passion to then make the decision to come out here to Utah and not only like to snowboard and like enjoy the mountains, but like you're working in the industry now? Tell us a little bit about that whole trajectory and how that happened.
Honestly, by accident. Like I had no intention. It's funny you mentioned like stand-up comedy, so I do improv.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
All
like
right.
just for fun.
I got follow-up questions after this.
Okay,
Go on.
great. Yeah, so I think I got back from Switzerland, and I've like been really into trail running. I've been into more like city activities, and so I was planning to move to Denver, and I was gonna try to work like in the health and wellness industry, and that didn't work out. Like I was on my way to move from my brother's house, like packed my car, was going to move to Denver, like the house didn't work out, the job didn't work out, so I was like, cool, okay. So I kind of just had to figure it out, and so there was a base camp outdoor party at the Evo Hotel here, and I applied for this job on LinkedIn, and the woman that's my boss now was going to be at this party, and so I was like, cool, I will be there. And I went and I met her, and then I got the job. And so I really didn't have any intention of getting back into the ski industry. Mostly one part out of fear, and then second, like I just lost touch with it. Like it wasn't my passion. I had skied my whole life, so I was like, I kind of want to do some other things. Yeah, so by accident, and like slowly but surely, I'm really enjoying it. I'm loving it. But the fear comes from the fact that I don't partake in drugs and alcohol. And so working in the ski industry was not something I ever had on my mind, because I was like, I don't do après ski. Like I don't want to go to work and then beer afterwards. I don't want to be drinking on the weekends and skiing.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, I don't think I fit into ski culture because that's not what I do. And like, obviously now, working in the ski industry for a little bit longer, I realize that not everyone is like that.
Correct.
But for me, that was just a very big fear. And also like how people would perceive me.
Yeah.
Because I have that stereotype So like other people also have that stereotype. So do they think like, oh, she's working in the ski industry, she must just drink beer after work. Like that's what she does. So
Yeah. Well, welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast, where we push against après-ski and we talk about skiing and enjoying the outdoors without drugs and alcohol because Austin was a heinous drug addict at some point. So, welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. You are very welcome here.
Great.
Yes. So, yeah, that is a big topic of what we're doing on this podcast, and I've had a lot of really awesome people on the podcast. Like you mentioned that you connected through Park City with like Alex, and Alex has been an awesome individual for me to come into contact with. It's interesting. I like grew up with literally a poster of that dude above my bed from like a ski movie. And then I was like sitting across from him recording a podcast, and I was like, whoa, this is like real. Like the topics that I'm bringing up on the podcast in this realm of like pushing against the après ski and like all the things that we think are so important in the ski industry, they like don't have to be. And I get it. Like normal people can like go out and party and have fun. I just like can't do that. They love to make this joke all the time. If ever, because like I'm still a normal person. I like to like go out and dance and have fun in the city. And like if there's drugs or alcohol around, it's not like, oh my God, I see drugs and alcohol. Like I'm going to do them right now. They always make this joke that if Austin has one beer, this whole city is burning down. And that is a very good representation of who I am as when I'm using drugs and alcohol. There's like no off switch.
Okay.
So my op-press turns into like only op-press. There's skiing, but I'm op-pressing while skiing.
And then it's like brunch the next morning.
Yeah, and then like bottomless mimosas. I'm like probably walking into a Denny's at like 3:00 in the morning, like doing something insane. So yeah, being sober is really cool for me. And I love to hear that it's cool for you. So, that's an important.
I want to clarify that I wouldn't say I'm sober.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're like not super into the scene.
Yeah.
Which I think is like an important thing to talk about because recently I don't know if it was my dad or something. They did like a recent, not a census, but some sort of study where they found that like most people in our age, like 1 in 4 people make the decision not to use drugs or alcohol anymore just because of the, like, they either see it like in family members with addiction or whatever. There is like a lot of people that just want to ski and not everything else that comes with it. Yeah. The ski industry is like I hate what the ski industry has become in a lot of ways. I think there's been some really cool people that have like come out and shared their story, like Alex Schlope or Tanner Hall, my friend Jenna. Like all of these people have like come out and talked about their stories openly and are totally going against the grain. Like, I don't know if you guys, what the hell is the name of that movie that just came out with Bo Martino? Weak Layers. Weak Layers was like just in theaters, and it was all about like creating a ski film, and it was like really interesting. It wasn't like documentary, it was like an actual like film and fictional story, but the entire movie was about getting fucked up. Like that was the entire movie was like a girl gets on the tram before she's competing, and she's on like so many different drugs that she like vomits on the tram. And it's like, is that what we're really trying to promote, like in the outdoor scene? Like, yeah. I get like, it sells, obviously. Like it was a major motion picture and like ends up in movie theaters, and that's like the topic that sells. But I hate that that's the topic that sells.
Well, that's why there's so much fear in the ski industry. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, have you ever dealt with like addiction or?
Not so much. I feel like growing up in a, like, you know, in an environment that like there was kind of absence of like all these like, you know, external addiction, external like drugs and whatnot. So I feel like I kind of grew up like sheltered from him. Obviously, like, you know, going through the college phase and everything, getting introduced to all these like, you know, drugs and alcohol, I was just kind of overwhelmed by all of it. And but yeah, like I never like had, I feel like he kind of attested this, I never have like this addictive personality. I feel like that's kind of why I feel like I've been away from it. But I've also seen people from kind of similar background as I had, but like, you know, this didn't have any guidance, didn't have any kind of direction. They just like went into it head first because like they just like was you know, like, you know, there is like no proper education in this country or in like the country that I grew up in, right? Like, you know, there no proper education about like what kind of effects different drugs and different things have on your body. I feel like if like, you know, if you're speaking truth and openly about it, I feel like then we can kind of tackle it in a very more educative way rather than like, oh, like we don't talk about it, sorry, in this country, you know what I mean? So I never have to deal with anything like that personally. I'm really thankful about it. But yeah, I've seen a lot of like lives like getting ruined by like all these like things that could be avoided, you know?
Yeah.
And like that was the whole point of us doing that fundraiser at Snowbird last week, was like, this is not like a glorified, we're not like doing it for attention. We raised like over $5,000 for like something that we believe in and something that is like so ignored in the ski industry. Like mental health in general, everyone's like, oh, like you ski mountains, like you're a bro, everything's fine, let's just go drink a beer about it. And it's like, great, that's awesome. Like at the end of the day, do whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
If like you get to the bottom of the mountain, you want to go have beers with the boys, like awesome, great, whatever. But I feel like it's such a glorified thing where it like doesn't need to be. Let's glorify the really cool thing that we just did for 8 hours before those beers. Like we're on 2 pieces of wood, or in your case, dirty snowboarder.
Hey, there's 2 of us here.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Man, I'm outnumbered.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm outnumbered. But my point to that is like, let's glorify this crazy thing that we're doing. We're like flying down frozen water on 2 pieces of wood. Like I'm throwing myself off rocks and cliffs and all these crazy things. And then like for the most part in the ski industry, it's like, oh yeah, it was a cool day, let's go have beers about it. And it's like, okay, cool. Like I'm going to go home. I'm going to record a podcast and like meet cool people and like do whatever. But like if that makes you happy, awesome.
Yeah.
It's an interesting world in the ski industry. So I very much try and go against the grain. I feel at times like I try and not be like preachy about this subject, but it's like something I'm passionate about. And sometimes I get a little fiery.
That's good. No,
yeah.
it's important. I mean, like, no, like, I think, like, for me, you know, I've also never struggled with, like, addiction or anything, but I don't know if this will make sense, but, like, I can, like, you know, like, you can, like, clearly, like, see yourself in the future, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're like, okay, like, I have this path and this path, and, like, I can, like, see them. And so in my mind, I'm like, Thursday beers, cool. But then it like I can like easily see it turning into like, oh, Friday and like Saturday. And like in my mind, I rationalize it as like I can see it being like one decision just like really easily turning into like a lot of decisions. And maybe that's from my experience with like drugs and alcohol, in the sense of like I know how good it feels. Like I think the first time I did like hard drugs, I woke up the next morning and I was like, I understand how people get addicted. Like in my mind, I couldn't rationalize it. I was like, well, I don't understand. Like you just do it and then you don't.
Yeah.
But then I woke up the next morning and I was like, wow, like it feels like it's so good.
Yeah.
And so like, I think in my mind, I could like see myself on that path maybe, or like doing it more than I would like to. And so there's just a big fear about like you become who you surround yourself with. And so if you're surrounded by people that do drugs and drink alcohol, even if you don't want to, it's very easy to be like, sure, why not? Because like it's one night, but then it turns into like 10 nights, and then you're like, what am I doing?
Especially in a small ski community like you live in. Like, it's so easy if you're living in a place like Park City. It's like right there. You're probably living like 3 minutes from the hill.
Yep.
The bar is 30 seconds off the hill. It's like so easy to like, okay, I'm going to ski, I'm going to work, I'm going to drink, I'm going to ski, I'm going to work, I'm going to drink.
Yeah.
And it's just like that for 6 months straight, and the ski season's done, and everyone's like, all right, what do we do now?
We keep drinking.
Yeah,
like what do people do in small ski towns after work if they don't drink, right? Like I know what I do, but I'm also wondering, like, I haven't met the people that don't. Like I'm like, where are my people at that like just go home and like make dinner and chill and I don't know, like have another hobby besides drinking.
You've got two of them right
I
here.
know. It's too bad you guys don't live here. Because I also go home from work and I'm like, or skiing, and I'm like, let me record a podcast.
Yeah. Let's be productive. And it was actually, we'll explain the craziness of you coming this afternoon. So we get home from skiing. I was exhausted. I lay it down for like 10 minutes, turn on the alarm for like 20 minutes, and Becca showed up, and there's like a knock on the door, and I'm like, oh God. Like, I'm like still in my long underwear from skiing. My hair is probably insane. And I'm just answering the door, and this poor girl, Becca, is like standing at the door, and I'm just like, oh God, oh Jesus, let me get my life together. So that happened.
Mind you, I've also like never met you guys or like
Yeah.
been here.
Yeah.
So like coming to a random house, I was like, this is like, I hope I'm in the right place.
And then a crazed ski man coming out of a nap opens the door. I'm sure the things that were going through your head. I am so sorry.
I've seen weirder.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the ski industry,
I thought you were just gonna do the podcast like that. I was like, this wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I could have just thrown on a beanie, Well, I guess I'm wearing a beanie now.
Anyway.
Anyways. So, what's your plan after the season? Do you have any idea what next steps are for you after Park City? I know you mentioned that this is kind of a short thing. Naveed's cracking another seltzer. As I made the recommendation, we need many seltzers at the table.
Yeah, you like tripling.
Yeah, listen.
My one.
Soda water with a lime, that's my going out drink. When I'm at home, you gotta crack a nice boy. A nice ice cold boy keeps everything gone.
Yeah.
Anyways, ADHD brain there.
Okay.
So what are your plans? Where do you see yourself in the next 6 months?
No idea.
That's what we love to hear.
I mean, so yeah, my job is seasonal right now. It ends in May. And my boss is trying to get them to extend it. I don't know if that'll happen. I think like at this point in my brain, it's like 50-50. But I think for the summer, my plan is to maybe take a road trip and take the podcast on a road trip. And
Nice.
Yeah, like start doing some more in-person interviews. But other than that, like I really want to run. Like I mentioned that I'm a runner, and so I do trail races and kind of just want to hop around. I've done a lot of traveling outside of the US, but I haven't really traveled within the US.
Yep.
So to just like hop around Utah, Colorado, and do some races, that's kind of what I'm gonna do.
That's amazing. You couldn't pay me $1 million to run. I got it. I was in a little phase. I could run like 3.5 miles at like a 7:30 pace, and that's about all I got in me. After 3 miles.
Not bad.
I was like,
What are you
what? That's
talking
like
about?
a really good pace.
Listen,
I'm over here like I run 10 to 12 minute miles when I'm doing it.
yeah, but you're running like ultra marathons. That sounds like the most terrifying thing to me on the planet.
Well, let me get Kristen back in. Maybe we can just take over the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Which ultramarathon are you trying to do?
See, I don't know yet. I think like this is my year of like fun and like just believing that everything that's meant to happen will come into my life. I feel like in the past years I've had a lot of expectations.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of goals. Like I've set goals and I'm like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, it's gonna be great. And like I have expectations for how it's gonna go. And then I'm just like, it always ends up different, you know?
Yeah.
Like regardless of the goal that I've met, I'm just like, it always looks different. And so this year I'm kind of just like, I'm just like holding everything loosely. And I'm like, okay, like I know I want to run, but like what races I want to do, where I want to end up. Like I know I want to keep doing the podcast. Like I have like my three like pillars of like, yeah, this is like how I live my life.
Yeah.
But kind of just like, I want to be free to say yes to things as they come and not like worry about it. I'm just cruising.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
And that's the way to be.
Yeah.
If there's one person that can attest to that right now, it is me. I have not been home in like 6+ weeks. My cat is gonna claw me to death when I get home.
He was so clingy. I went up to his place and water his plant and pet his cat around. His cat was so clingy.
Oh,
Just,
yeah.
it was on my lap the whole time.
Yeah. I do. So I own a condo in Denver and I rent out the second bedroom. So Leonard's not totally alone. Don't worry, listeners. He's totally well taken care of.
His name is Leonard.
Yeah. We also call him Leonardo da Pussio, Benny the Butcher, Lenny, Leo. He's got a lot of names floating
He
around.
might get confused.
Well, yeah. I think if he hears like Lee, like in any way, he's just like,
There.
he's there.
That's me.
So something that I was looking forward to talking to you about that I think is the second, if not the most ignored thing in the ski industry, is women in the ski industry.
Yeah.
This is something that has become way more apparent to me, like as of recently, as I'm like finding my way like back into the scene and like with sponsors and everything and like social media and seeing how the whole industry works and traveling with Kristen, like that has been like an apparent thing. Like she's a photographer and she's like trying to get her feet in the door with like other photographers in the industry, and it like the ski industry is just a big boys club. And I wanted to hear your perspective of like, how has it been for you? Like what are some things that you've noticed? Have you noticed any change? Have you noticed that it's still a big boys club? Like how has it been for you as a woman in the ski industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because, so like, again, because I took a very long hiatus from skiing, but I think back to being younger and even growing up in a ski town, I had no girlfriends that skied, and I still don't really. Like, I have like one or two girlfriends maybe in Denver that ski, but the rest of my friends that I will go ski with are males. And I don't think it was something I ever really noticed until recently when I was like, I kind of just want to like go ski with the girls. And now I do think there's more women's groups being created. I just think when I was growing up, it did feel like a boys club. Now that might also be the fact that I have two older brothers and I would just go ski with them and their friends. And now, I mean, my boss is a woman and then our two communications managers are women. So like I work with women on a daily basis. But again, I mean, the two guys that I've made really good friends with, they're guys, you know, I go ski with them. And I think, yeah, it is heavily male dominated. And I don't think I really noticed that. And it's also like, I've still noticed a very masculine mindset within the ski industry, even if you are a woman, of like, gotta be one of the boys, gotta keep up with the boys, beers with the boys. Like, I'm one of the boys. And I'm like, but can't we just be one of the girls? Like, can't we go have like a fun ski day? And like, there's something great about skiing with the guys. I think it really pushes you. I think, you know, you learn a lot because oftentimes like the guys that I ski with are better than me, which is great. But I think there's something to be said about just like having a fun day out there with the gals and like not feeling that pressure. So I would say like, as I get more into the ski industry, I might notice more, but still pretty new. So
yeah, absolutely. You know, it's a weird thing how you see it everywhere in the world. As a male, I feel like we don't notice it as much because we are, in a sense, like in sports in general, just like you get more airtime. Like,
yeah,
the WNBA is not getting as much funding as the NBA. Like, there's all these like different facets within just the sports industry in general where women are just kind of like, okay, they have their own league, and it's like, why is that?
Yeah.
And the ski industry is, I feel like, ever more prevalent in a lot of these ways because, like, you make a good point. Like, Naveed and I have predominantly male ski friends, and I'm sure that, like, Danielle and Kristen and other people that are in our ski group are, like, those women definitely feel what you're feeling. Like, I just wanted a day to go ski with the girls.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to just go ski with a bunch of girls one day and not feel the amount of pressure that I feel on a daily basis with the guys that I ride with, because it's just like, oh man, here's another cliff that could kill me, but you know what? Like, it was funny when I was skiing with my buddy John Michael the other day. He like knows Alta so well, like knows that place like the back of his hand. So he is just flying down, like jumping off cliffs, and I don't know that mountain at all. I don't know what these cliffs look like, but I'm just like following right behind him, and I'm coming off, like I come to the lip of these things without looking at them, and I'm like, oh, here we go. And it's like, whoa. And that is like motivating pressure for me in a sense, where I'm like, when I'm skiing with the guys, it's like, all right, let's get after it. Let's get after it. Let's get after it. But like, for example, Coalition Snow, have you heard of them?
Yeah, I just interviewed, Hannah Montrenga. She's one of their athletes. So,
okay.
Yeah, she lives in Bed.
Yeah, so it's really funny. Kristen's sister just bought a pair of Coalitions, and I was telling her, I was like, I'm so glad you bought Coalitions, because I was like speaking to them in the beginning of the season. I was like shopping around with different brands for a new ski sponsor, and I landed with Majesty. But I was talking with the team at Coalition. Like, the owner of Coalition is a badass woman, and it's the exact same thing. Like, they're struggling to sell skis because of the niche that they've created, and I absolutely hate that. Yeah. It's like, you click on their Instagram page, and I'm like, fuck yeah, this is awesome. Yeah. Like, and not in like a weird way, because like most of it is like mostly naked nude women. I'm not saying fuck yeah for that reason. I'm saying fuck yeah because they're like going against the grain in an industry that like shies away from companies like Coalition. It's like Armada. Let's go Armada. Like, that's the boys club. Like, that was started at Mount Hood. Like, I love what they're doing, and I know that they're struggling, and it like actually drives me crazy to think that like these are actually good skis, and like they are a small sort of mom and pop shop that desperately needs like attention for not only their skiing, but like the niche that they've created in an industry that it like shies away from it. So yeah, I'm glad that you interviewed one of the athletes from Coalition, because their whole team is awesome. Like, I love all the content that they're making. They just seem like a cool brand that's going against the grain, and I am the king of going against the grain.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and Hannah's pretty cool. She didn't learn to ski, or she snowboards, until late in life. Maybe like 20s, and so I think she's only been skiing for like, I keep saying skiing, snowboarding for 6 years, and she's already competing.
Wow,
and
that's
she's
awesome.
So she started her own group. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's for like park meetups and stuff for girls, because she talks a lot about how like the park is so unapproachable for females.
Oh my God.
And I love that, because I was like, I grew up in that area, and like when we would have competitions for I wasn't in like a free ride group. I don't know what my group was called. Anyways, we'd have park competitions like occasionally. I literally didn't go. Like, I told my mom I was sick. I was like, I don't want to go compete in park with all these guys, because like scary to mess up, I think, for women in front of guys, like unless you have like a really high level of confidence, and I think guys feel that way too, but it is just a lot more unapproachable for women. And okay, it's funny that you mentioned though about like skis and stuff, because I do gear testing articles, and like finding a pair of ski bibs that fit me properly, because like a lot of them are designed by men, is insane. I was like, I have tried on like 15 pairs and like tested them, all of them. I'm like, you realize like women have boobs, right? Like this is not gonna work. And then they make them like 10 feet too long for my legs, and I'm just like, you're not designing them for women. And that was really eye-opening for me.
Kristen literally just mentioned this. We are in the car. She's always complaining that ski socks are too tight on her calves because ski companies just make like women's ski socks like dainty and small, but like women have leg muscles too. And Smart Wool just created a ski with like wider calves, and she came across like an Instagram reel. This girl was in a gondola. She was like, ladies, I found it. Like I found the ski sock for us, because I feel like that is a very common thing in a male dominated industry. Males are probably creating the products. And that's what I think is cool about Coalition, and is that it's like, no, they're creating like women's products, and like men still ski their skis. I've never really understood why like so many things are not unisex, like in the ski industry. Like why can't a woman use a men's ski? Like, or why can't a man use a woman's ski? Like, I know that there's like different flex patterns, and like women typically weigh less, so there's like different things that go into it. And this, you know, I could probably get berated for this because I don't know the tech behind like the differences in the ski or whatever. But I think that is like a common thing, that men are designing your products and have no idea like how to do that.
It's like having a skier design snowboard stuff. You know?
Oh, I'd be like, so good at it.
I don't know.
You know what I would do? If I was designing snowboards, I would just saw them in half and then
make it a split board.
Make it
those
skis.
Exist.
Yeah. Well,
exist.
No. I'd saw them in half and then put ski bindings on them, and then tell Naveed, hey man, I think you should switch to the other side. Get away from the dark side.
Tell her like what you said in the chairlift today, like the ranking system.
Oh yeah, the ranking system, sure. So obviously skiers. We're putting skiers at the top.
We're listening.
I'm waiting for this.
Yeah.
And then we did say the most badass are definitely sit skiers. Like
sit skiers to the top.
Like that is so
great. I'm glad that
like,
you could give them that level.
Yeah, like Trevor Kennison, what a fucking badass. All these people that are on sit skis are just, that is something I don't know if I'd ever be able to do. But anyways, we got sit skiers, then we got skiers, and then we've got mono skiers, definitely sliding in there. And then we've got those BMX bike guys.
I just figured out about those things.
Yeah.
Super cool, by the way. I would have to say they might be cooler than snowboarding. I was like, that's actually really cool.
Yeah, and then what were the other things that we threw
cross
in there?
country?
Oh yeah,
no way. That's where I draw the line.
Yeah, I know. I was like, nope.
We've got cross country skiing, then we've Nordic skiing, and then maybe snowshoeing, and then I think
absolutely not.
And then I think snowboarders sliding in at the bottom.
And the funny thing is, all his best friends in Denver is snowboarders.
Have you ever tried snowboarding?
I have. I ate shit.
Because you weren't good at it. That's why you don't like it.
I was terrible. I've got nothing against snowboarders.
How
I
long?
grew up in Big Bear. I was the minority, big time. I snowboarded one time, caught my back edge, concussion, said, this isn't for me.
Okay, see, you didn't give it long enough. My first snowboard lesson, I cried like a baby, and I begged my mom never to make me go back because I was like, my feet hurt, my head hurts, I have fallen down way too many times. And then I went back the next day, and then I was like, ooh, I'm a pro. And then here I am. So
actually, now that I think of it, I I snowboarded pretty recently. I switched with my buddy Mike in Maine. I made it down like a blue. I was cruising.
Okay.
I wakeboard.
I don't know if I believe you.
I wakeboard. I was cruising just like this. You know?
Why not water ski?
Well, I do slalom ski as well, but wakeboarding is just better in general. Let's be honest. But when it comes to snow, you just want two things in between your feet. You know? Yeah, it's good.
I don't agree. I feel like you have more knee pain.
No.
This
This is. Hey, you've been complaining about your knee.
I mean, I ran into a tree. Okay, that was different.
Yeah, I did that recently. That was fun at Solitude. The day before we left for Alaska, we've got this like crazy Alaskan ski trip set up. I'm at Solitude, flying through the trees, double eject right into a tree, and was very quickly reminded how hard trees are. My lenses came out of my goggles.
Wow.
Yeah. My face was bleeding. I broke the GoPro off my helmet. And I sat there for a second and I like touched all my extremities and I was like, whoa, that could have really gone bad the day before I'm leaving for Alaska. And I'm like, everything's fine. Everything's fine. I did get my helmet replaced. If you get dents in your helmet, replace them, please. Like, seriously, your head is important.
I feel like you're just like a fearless man.
Well, yeah, that amygdala, I wish sometimes it would come on. It comes on sometimes.
Are you like this in every area of your life, or is this like a specific ski thing?
Yeah, in every area of my life,
Okay.
unfortunately. I probably drive the car too fast. I like jump off things that I shouldn't. Yeah, it's a bad trait, I think, in a lot of ways. I've broken so many bones you can't even like count on your fingers and toes anymore. So
You just gave up drinking for like that adrenaline now.
yeah,
It's a different drug you're replacing it with.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, the adrenaline drug
It's very
it's
nice
a hell
to-
of a drug, actually. Yeah, it really. It's really. I mean, drugs were awesome for. Drugs were awesome for a period of time until they weren't, and then skiing and all of my adrenaline sports definitely took over there. Kristen was saying the other day that she gets adrenaline from running. Do you get this feeling?
Oh yeah, like runner's high. It's
Oh,
such a thing.
such a nice thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like, I love
you
it.
know, I get like the opposite when I'm running. I'm like contemplating my life. Why am I in this position?
Why am I running?
Why am I running? I get the opposite. My adrenaline, I think, starts going down. And that runner's high you guys talk about, yeah, I've like gotten there. I've probably ran like 8 or 9 miles, and I like get into that zone, and it's just.
It's not your thing.
It's, whatever floats your boat. I mean, you guys snowboard, you run. It's exciting for you. So I'm going to let you guys have that space.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate
We'll
that.
take that.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll take that.
One win for the snowboarders. Yep. There we go. So, Becca, is there anything specifically that you want to ask either Naveed or I about our story, our background?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, obviously, about your travels.
Yeah.
And I'm also, the question that kind of has been floating around in my mind is about like, because traveling and skiing, I think, are like a very easy gateway into drugs. And like, I'm curious too about like your travel experiences with being sober, and like if you were sober before that, after that, and like,
Yeah.
have you also I'm just curious about your travels, I guess. Let's start there, but.
Yeah, well, I'll let Naveed go into this. This guy has me beat by like 5 countries, so we'll let him lean into it.
Yeah, I mean, the traveling part, like for me, was like part of my job for a while, and like I was kind of like going back and forth between different countries, and I stacked the number up a lot, but like over time, so I kind of slowed down the amount of countries I would travel. I still try to do like 1 or 2 new countries every year, but I try to like immerse myself in the culture of it, immerse myself in the history and everything, and try to like really understand. I travel like through the food culture. I traveled through the architecture. I feel like that's how I kind of like, like stacked my traveling up. I also like, I'm a type of person who's like not going around like trying to find party scene everywhere I go. I feel like that kind of helps me like totally avoid that like, culture of different areas.
That disco art museum we went to in Havana,
awesome.
Cuba, that was crazy.
That was crazy.
All right, I'll let you get back to it, but I wanted to throw that in.
I'm also curious about your mental health, like while traveling, because I know that's something like I struggled, I think, the most with my mental health during my travels, which I think is an interesting thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's like one of the reason I like, quit like working for Nat Geo and just kind of like came back and made like Denver my home. It was like because I was like on the road for so long and I just was struggling, like, in a way. I was like struggling for calling a place home, calling like, like making a good friend base and like, having a support system going on. I feel like that's constant. People who constantly travels, and I don't know how these like influencer people does that. Like, I just like don't get it. I feel like I would lose my mind. Like if I really do that, it's very isolating. It's like,
super isolating.
I feel like we try to like really glorify like all the beautiful thing of traveling. Mm-hmm. We ignore all the shitty thing that comes with traveling. You're constantly uncomfortable. You're constantly looking behind your shoulder, like, just making sure you're safe. Yeah. You have to figure out where you stay. You have to figure out what you're gonna eat, and like, you have to make sure like you can get back home safely. You're not losing your passport. Like there are a lot of things comes with like, stress with traveling. I feel like we don't glorify any of that. Like we just like don't even shed any kind of light on that. So like I kind of slowed down a lot. I feel like that like made me kind of like love traveling again. I love like appreciating the culture and everything about traveling again. But yeah, so yeah, we went to Cuba last year. I was like telling you about that. That was kind of a crazy last minute decision, but what a country.
That is a wild place, Cuba. Americans aren't really allowed there
I was gonna
quite
say.
yet. We were for a while, like during the Obama administration. Americans, they opened the borders again, and then good old Donald Trump walked in one swipe of a pen closed all borders again. So you have to like travel. The Office of Foreign Asset Control gives Americans, I think it's 12 reasons why they can travel to the country of Cuba. And you have to like fit into one of these categories. So one of them is like journalism. One is like, like religious based. But then there's this 12th distinction that is like very broad. And it is how most people get into the country of Cuba. Hopefully I don't get like flack for this. It's all over the internet.
In your country. You're in America.
I'm in America. There's this 12th distinction that all it says is you travel to the country of Cuba for quote unquote the support of the Cuban people. So
what does that even mean?
Exactly.
Very vague.
Yeah, it's a very vague distinction, and that is how we travel to the country of Cuba. But I had a run-in that Naveed didn't have. I'm calling him from the airport, like freaking out. So I had a layover in Tampa, which the crazy thing about Cuba, it is literally, you can see Cuba from Key West. They are some of our closest neighbors. Like, they're right there. Mm-hmm. You take off in Tampa and you're already landing in Cuba. Like, you don't go up to 35,000 feet. You just like coast and you land 15 minutes later.
I simply did not know that.
Yeah, it's like literally right there. So I land in Tampa, and not only is immigration totally different with people coming from Cuba, it's a totally different section of the airport. So if you're coming from Cuba, you're not going through normal like immigration. You're in your own like Cuban immigration like box. So I walk through, there's like tons of Americans, like there's tons of Cubans too, like coming back into the US. But I get there and this guy is, okay, I'm going to start this by saying this like gate agent or TSA, whatever you want to call it, TSA agent or whatever, he's standing in this little glass box, and he starts very quickly by referring to our current commander-in-chief, quote unquote, as Donald Trump. He said, "Did you know that our commander-in-chief told you can't travel to the country of Cuba?"
Mind you, in their last year.
Yeah, this is like within the last year. So Donald Trump is many years out of office.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't understand what you're like trying to get at, sir. And he was like, our commander-in-chief signed all these things with the Office of Foreign Asset Control, and you can't be traveling to Cuba. You're just an American boy. What was your reason for being in Cuba? And I quickly said, well, I traveled under the 12th distinction, support of the Cuban people. And like, he looked at me like, that's not going to work. How did you support the Cuban people? Meanwhile, I've got like a box of Cuban cigars that I'm like shaking that I've got these Cuban cigars like in my carry-on bag. I'm like, oh God, I'm going down. I just like threw them away. I was so scared. He starts like really drilling into me. How did you support them? How much money did you come with? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, Cuba's in the worst economic crisis ever. I came with like $400 and I lived like a king for like 2 weeks. Like, I was living the dream. And he's like, you think $400 is gonna support the Cuban people? And I was like, look, man, a $20 bill in Cuba is like gold. Like, to live in Havana, like our tour guide in Havana was telling us that her apartment, like a 2-bedroom nice apartment in Havana, is like $40 a month. They are in like the worst economic crisis they've ever been in. You have to stand in a line that's like 4 city blocks long to get your rations for the day. So you have ration books. It's still a communist country. Mm-hmm. So you have to walk up to the stall and you get your piece of bread. You get your 3 eggs for the week. It's a joke. So everything is done on the black market. Like, you want chicken, you're getting it from Jose down the road, or you're going to like if you buy anything in Cuba, you literally have to walk up to someone's door and you knock on their door, and that's the guy that has water, like clean drinking water. Wow. It was it was a different world. But anyways, like, that is the sort of like life they're living over there. And that is solely because the borders have been blocked from U.S. citizens coming into the country and spending their money in their country. The second that those borders were blocked, like, these people are like dying and struggling on the streets. Yeah. So the fact that I had like a TSA agent like drilling down my neck about like how much money I was spending, and I'm walking away and he goes, the office of OFAC is going to be crawling up your ass so fast you're not even going to know what hit you. I've yet to hear from them. I totally legally traveled to that country. I had visas. But I call Naveed like that evening, or as I'm walking away from the desk, and I'm like, dude, he was on a flight earlier in the day. I was like, did you get like drilled? Like, what? Like, the office of OFAC's coming after me. Like, I just wanted to go to Cuba. And he was like, no, dude, I just walked right through. It was super cool. And it was like, I just got a bad egg. Like, that guy was pissed that day. But to answer your question about, like, mental health, substance use, travel, substance use is not something that, like, even crosses my mind anymore. Like, I'm so far removed from that way of life that, like, being in the ski industry, which we've talked about, is very much pushed in that après lifestyle, does not like affect me. But yeah, I mean, traveling is tough. I travel a lot. I'm homesick right now. Like, literally in this current moment sitting here, I just like want to be at home with my cat and like holding my cat and like hanging out and cooking a nice meal and like going up to my rooftop and like looking at the mountains and chilling. Yeah. But the other side of that is like, I've also had like the most incredible like 2 months of my life. Like, I just skied in Alaska. I skied the biggest lines and like couloirs and spines that I've ever skied. I'm standing at the top of these things like, oh God, pressing the radio like, all right, I'm dropping, and you better drop. Like there's no options. Like you're skiing down. So the experiences that we gain traveling, I think, are unmatched to anything else. Mm-hmm. You lived in Spain for a while. My whole family is from Spain. I've spent many of summers in Spain where living in the culture, and like Naveed mentioned, like learning every little nuance about it, the architecture, the way that people eat, the way that people go out at night, the activities that they do. Like I learned more in a week of traveling that I did in 18 years of school.
Yep.
Like the conversations and the people that you meet, I would not trade that for the world. My grandfather was a world traveler. He traveled to over 100 countries throughout the world. He wrote a book about his life and travels, and like he put that travel bug into me at a very young age, and I'm like, yeah, this is as hard as it can be at times. Like I just mentioned, like I want to be at home with Leonardo DiPuccio with a nice like burger or something on my couch, but I also wouldn't be on a podcast with you, Becca. I wouldn't be hanging out with Naveed. I wouldn't be having an incredible ski day like we just had at Brighton with like blower powder all day. I wouldn't have done the fundraiser at Snowbird. Like all of these things come with a price. Like these are amazing things that I'm experiencing and doing, but I also have like a life in Denver, and I miss my friends, and I miss hanging with Naveed and Daniel and all my closest friends, and I miss my cat. And yeah, mental health is like, it's a balance, and it's almost feels like a roller coaster.
Yeah, I would say I've never like striked a balance. Like I would say life is more of just like this ebb and flow, and like just some days you feel better than others, really.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is. I think it really is important to like find a balance. There has been a lot of times in my travels, I got so sick in Cuba, and like
that's the worst.
Oh,
like getting sick.
I got what I call C squared. I got E. coli and COVID. Like you can't even make it up. It was the most, I mean...
Are you sure you don't want to do improv?
Yeah, I probably should. Yeah, poor Naveed. And Natalia Benningfield, as I call her.
You mean Natasha Benningfield?
No, a girl came on the trip with us. Her name is Natalie. I don't even know her last name, but I just called her Natalia Benningfield, and then it stuck. I make nicknames for everyone. Okay. Yeah, these poor people had to deal with... I'm not going to go into detail. It was bad. You can only imagine. Yeah, but travel is something that I hope I never give up in any capacity. I hope it's something that I instill in my kids someday, if and when I have kids. I hope it's, my parents instilled it in me. My parents are world travelers. My grandparents were, the people I surround myself with are world travelers. And like I said, like you learn so much on the road, and like having a conversation with somebody that is like seen more than one culture or experienced more cultures, they're just honestly more interesting people. Like they're more open-minded about the world. I feel like people get in their little bubbles, and then that's the only thing that they know, and their politics relate to that bubble, their conversations relate to that bubble, their worldviews relate to that bubble. And if that bubble thinks a certain way, like Cuba, Donald Trump says hate Cuba, so now we're all going to hate Cuba. And it's like, we went to that country, and it was like this beautiful place with beautiful people, and like the culture and like Cuban people love Cuba. It is like they are prideful.
Very much so. Very prideful. Yeah.
Very prideful about the beauty of this island. And like that, I wouldn't trade for the world. So That was a very long-winded way of saying that, like, yeah, mental health declines for sure, but then you also get these like super high highs where it's like, holy shit, this is amazing, to like, oh my god, I really just want to hold Leonard.
How about you? How long were you were you in Spain, right? Like, how long were you there for?
Yeah, so I studied abroad for a year in college as well. So like I was in New Zealand, then I was in London, and then after college I was in Spain for a year.
Yeah.
Well, I guess 9 months, and then after that Switzerland, and then Hawaii, and then Switzerland. And so like off and on, but for like 2 years I would say I was pretty much, I think my mom and I counted, and it was like I moved 8 times last year. I had like 8 different addresses.
Whoa.
Or like the last 2 years or something.
Yeah.
Which can be quite overwhelming.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah.
You mentioned Hawaii.
Yes.
You lived there?
I house sat, for
Wow.
like 2 months last summer.
Amazing. So I do this thing called the Great Thaw, the Great Austin Thaw.
Is that where you like de-thaw from ski?
Yes, yes, exactly. I put myself, I think, through so much cold pain for so many months that I'm just like, all right, skiing's done. It's time for the Great Thaw.
Yeah.
My parents lived in Hawaii for many years. That's where they met. So they travel all around the world, and I was like fortunate enough to go to all these places with them, but they never wanted to go to Hawaii because they lived there. I am going to pick your brain after this because I think Hawaii or Costa Rica is going to be the Great Thaw this year. Just lay on a beach and soak it in. And then,
I hate being cold. Like,
Really?
I really just
Really?
want to stress that. Like, like it is. I remember my first week working here, and I haven't updated my ski gear, guys, in like so long. My ski boots were 10 years old, and I'm like out on this. Actually, this was the photo shoot with Alex.
Yeah.
I had to ask someone in the bathroom to unbutton my pants because my hands were so cold, and I didn't feel them coming back anytime soon. So I like go into the bathroom, and I'm like trying, and I can't, and so I'm like, I'm sorry, but like I really have to like pee. Like, can you please unbutton my pants? And I go back out there, and they're not buttoned. Like, I sit down at the table, and I'm like, I can't physically, my hands like can't do it. And so like we were on this shoot. It was a really cold day.
Yeah.
And I'm on the lift with them, and I was like, can we just like go into the lodge for like 5 minutes? Like, I was like, I need to, like, my hands, my feet, like I wanted to cry. We ended up like sitting for a while having coffee, and I was like, I love these people because I was like, I just want to stay here. But yeah, I didn't update my ski boots, then my snowboard boots, and so I finally went in, got some new socks, got some new boots, and I was like, I've been missing out on 10 years of technology.
Yeah.
And I finally got new base layers, and
Yeah.
my life was changed, and I got new gloves because my gloves were super old too. But
You're glowing up.
I was like, I hate being cold, and so like even today I was out for a while, and I was like, I was so cold. And
Oh my goodness.
I have such a hard time. Like I envy and like really respect the backcountry skiers that are out there.
God.
Super like Alaska. Like I can't even imagine how cold Alaska is.
Yeah, it was cold. Poor Naveed here. I take him for an Avi course.
Yeah.
Where we all do an Avi course. We got hit with this polar vortex in Colorado.
Okay.
The coldest recorded temperature in Colorado history was in that week that we're having the Avi course. We get to Rocky Mountain National Park. We meet with this guy, Ben. He's our guide. We're going up there. We're doing the Avi course. The ambient temperature at the car, like no wind, just sitting there, said -20. So then we're headed up the mountain, and the wind really starts picking up. And it got to -44 with wind chill in Rocky Mountain National Park. Yeah.
Yeah.
And these poor guys are like trying to like learn all about Avi gear and like all this, and we're like digging pits in like Arctic temperatures. Mm-hmm. Even I, who am very well accustomed to cold weather, that was a lot. that.
I think that would be a lot for anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. That was insane. I was like freshly out of like my knee injury too.
Yeah.
Like, that was not a good day.
Yeah.
Just-
Alaska, surprisingly, like Alaska is very cold. But it being like a maritime coastal area, it doesn't get as cold as people think. So the further you get away from the coast and keep going north towards like Fairbanks, we're talking like sub-zero temperatures all the time. But in the area that we were staying in Girdwood, which is like an hour from Anchorage, and then we were skiing in various passes like in that area, Turnagain Pass, Hatcher's Pass. I was in like a long sleeve shirt on the up track, like base layer, and it was probably like 10 degrees, no wind. And then you get to the top and you're pretty cold and you throw on jackets. But I was like pleasantly surprised. Like you stayed pretty close to the coast and it was pretty chilling in Alaska.
Okay.
I mean, you probably would have been freezing. You sound...
I just run really cold. Like I'm the person that like if I go skiing, I have to take a shower afterwards. Otherwise, like I'm like shivering. Like I can't. And it doesn't matter like how warm it was that day. Like I just get really cold and I just can't warm up.
Oh man,
But
I wish I had that.
like
Today, I was dying.
I was
at
running
I was
hot.
so
But
I had all the flaps
Brighton-
open.
In Brighton, it was like pretty sunny too, like for the most
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It was like 20 degrees though, and oh man, yeah. Sometimes I just ski with a long sleeve t-shirt and like a shell.
I can do that in the spring.
Yeah.
But like it's not spring yet. I mean, it's like 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
But okay, I'm curious. Like, okay, everything that we've talked about is like uncomfortable. Like, I don't know, like skiing's uncomfortable, being cold's uncomfortable, being outside all the time is, traveling is, like it's hard. It's like, what is the thing that keeps you both doing these things? Like when you're like, it's like 5 a.m. and you don't want to get out of your warm bed to go in the cold. Like, what's the thought that's like, okay, this is going to get me up every time?
For me, it's just passion. Like, I grew up in a ski town. I grew up in the outside, like the outside industry, the hiking, climbing, mountain biking. I've got this sick bug in me that, and I'll quote my therapist from Maine that basically saved my life in the rehab I was at. He looked at me at my first day of rehab and he said, if you don't learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable, you're not going to make it anywhere in this life. And I like live by that. Being sober is not like, I was unfortunately born with the genetic disease of addiction. It's like years and years of science and studies have shown that like it's a genetic disease. It's passed down through a family. So I'm like, unfortunately born with this thing where the second I start doing drugs or alcohol, for some reason my brain like turns on. So the comfortable thing for me is to be doing drugs. So I had to move into this zone of like in early recovery, like I've just got to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that plays into so much of my life. Sure, I would love to sleep in until 9 a.m. and like wake up and have a normal life, but that wouldn't make me happy.
Yeah.
I did the 9 to 5 shuffle for many years, and it was the worst thing I've ever done to myself. And
Preach.
yeah, like for some people, like that rudimentary schedule is awesome for them.
Yeah.
Like get up at 8 a.m., you have your coffee, you head to work, and you've got like the 9 to 5. That does not make me happy. I like the uncomfortable nature of like, oh boy, I've got a mortgage this month, so I better figure something out. But I'm going to go ski first. And like, I'm going to make some cool content and reach out to some brands. And like, we run a creative agency, we run a podcast, like reach out to these companies, like figure out how to do it. That uncomfortability, I don't think a lot of people, I know you understand, we talked about that before the podcast. Like that's an uncomfortable thing. Like, not knowing how you're going to pay the mortgage this month, especially with like a new company and like everything that you're like doing, some people just fold and they're like, no, like 9 to 5 is comfortable. I get my paycheck on the 1st and the 15th and that's great.
Yeah.
So that is my whole MO. Like, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And if there's ever a point that I'm like, I don't want to do this today, I just think of that crazy 65-year-old ex-heroin addict from New York saying, hey, cocksucker, if you don't get comfortable being uncomfortable, you're fucked, okay? I just have that playing in my head at all times.
I love that.
Woody Hayward, a true legend amongst people. Definitely
funny.
saved my life. So,
Yeah. And you?
For me would be I grew up in a country. I'd never seen snow before I moved here. So I never had the opportunity or like even thought about like this could be something that I could be like chasing, right? Like all these opportunities that I have. So I feel like when I got the opportunity of freedom, or I got the opportunity of like, okay, I can go out and do things. I can go out and like explore and be explorative and like just. I feel like I just took an advantage of that, and I still am, and I'm very grateful that I have this opportunity that I like. A lot of people that I grew up with never did. So I just like try my best to like enjoy life. And I was like talking to you, like I do have that like you only live once kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And try go gather as much as like within the rights of like within like not losing your mind, kind of like doing too much, but I try my best to like figure something out in my schedule to like go after it. So I'm skiing, like snowboarding.
I know.
I know. God damn it. All right, we're gonna do a podcast on our own. Just leave all the skiers, so like all that lingo is gone. But anyways, just snowboarding. Just like enjoying that like euphoric experience of like riding like deep powder. Like it's. Like my cousin was like recently, I was like road tripping with him. He was asking me, he was like, why do you like do it so much? And like, what's the hype about riding powder? I mean, it looks cool and all, but what is it? It's like, it's such a cool feeling.
Yeah, it feels good.
You cannot explain it to anybody.
it's euphoric.
Unless even people who snowboard or like learning snowboarding, maybe they can do some blue runs, but they struggle in like powder. Once you start getting those like really like smooth turns in powder, you just can't go back. I was like, oh yeah, nothing under your feet like feels like you're like riding cloud.
Just floating, and if you fall, you're like, I'm falling in a cloud. It's
Yeah. And like when you fall, everybody cheers, like feels like it's just like it's fun at that time. But no, like I love like just like chasing those kind of high because I feel like I have the opportunity and like I'm lucky enough to do so. So I feel like I just like don't want to take this opportunity granted, like so I'm just gonna go out and go after it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh man, I think like kind of a mix of like I have done a lot of things to please people and like fell down holes that like I didn't want to be in, and I'm like waking up one day like why am I here? Like I don't really want to get up and go do this thing. I don't want to have to be here at this time. So like I think for me it's kind of along the same lines of just you only live once, and like there's nothing better than the feeling of like I love sunrises, and like yeah, getting up sucks. Like do I want to get up at 2 in the morning in the cold? No. But like there's nothing better than having a warm cup of coffee on the top of the mountain, like after you've done physical activity.
So good.
And it's just like that feeling and the people that you meet and the conversations that you have. Like I've never had better conversations than like with people that are doing things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so I know that like if that's what I want for my life, like that's what I also have to embody.
Exactly. Like you start appreciating this little thing. I can relate to that. Like, cause recently what he was like talking about that negative temperature when we went to that Abbey course, I brought up a canister of miso soup, like a really warm miso soup.
That was
Yeah.
a nice taste.
Yeah,
There.
it's just like you're doing something physical and endurance like wise that you enjoy, but all the little things you do, like the snacks, becomes like so much more meaningful
Food
to
is
you.
so good.
So good. I feel like every little thing that you like, just like you can just like turn off your brain and just chewing on some like snacks and like you wouldn't even think about it. But have that snacks on top of a mountain, it's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like the high cannot chase too.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. It's just like the more you experience, the more you have to like share, to offer, to talk about, to like, yeah, I've done some things that maybe I shouldn't have done. And I've, done a lot of things that maybe I did for other people, like to please them. But I mean, I'm a lot better for it. And like traveling and these experiences, I feel like the growth that I've seen in myself from doing these things is so much more than I would have gotten if I like didn't do any of these things. So
Absolutely. And that comes back to the whole idea of get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like we're learning every single day that we're feeling uncomfortable. Like if I was at home right now, I would probably ski like 3 days a week and I would be happy, but like am I like really like pushing myself to like learn new things? And sure, like slowing things down is also really important. Like I'm excited to get home and like
big proponent of self-care.
Yeah, big proponent of self-care as well. Anyways, I think this is our longest episode of Falling Off the Floor. It felt so easy, and
it's funny. Like, okay, so I haven't gone on a lot of podcasts, so being asked questions, it's funny because like I always am the one asking questions.
Yeah.
But then I also think about it, I'm like, it's so nice to be around people that also know how to ask questions. Because like I feel like I meet some people in life and I'm like, do you know what a question is? Like, have you heard of those?
Those things where you like learn about the other person. Yeah.
Like those are cool. You
Yeah,
know?
those are cool.
Because eventually I run out. Like just because I podcast, like doesn't mean sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to ask you right now.
Yeah. Are you great on first dates?
I haven't been on a first date in like, oh God, I don't know how many years, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a good like dinner person with people that I don't know. Like I can't, I don't like to eat a meal with someone like I'm a big like let's get a coffee and like go for a walk or like let's do a physical activity.
Yeah.
But like sitting across from someone you've never met that like what if they don't know how to ask questions? And then I'm just like,
God, those non-question askers, they're the worst. Are you good at interviews?
Yeah, see, and this is, you guys are good at like the conversational thing.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at that because I feel like my podcasts sometimes are very like interviewee where like, but I think sometimes my guests don't know that they can ask me questions back. So I'm trying to like get that more included to be like, you are allowed to ask questions. Like it is a conversation.
I guess, well, I know you're really good at podcast interviewing. I guess more of my question are you good at like job interviews?
Oh no.
Really?
Like when people ask me questions, I'm like, I don't know who I am. Like the first question of like, so tell me about yourself. And I'm like, there's
a difference between like job interview questions and just like having a legit conversation because like, you know, like for example, we just talked about like one of the questions in the podcast was like, where do you see yourself in 6 months?
Yeah.
Now we're like, oh, we don't know, but I guess we're friends and we can talk about like, but if you say that, like, you're fucked.
Like I see myself at this desk like for the next 10 years. No, like it's funny. So I interviewed for a lot of jobs. LinkedIn was my best friend. I hated every second of it. For like to get this job. And I remember like I'm very good at like, okay, like how do I feel in this interview? Like people that are like type A would be like, what is she talking about? But like I'm very into feeling. And so some of the interviews I just felt terrible. I was like, your energy is like not for me. And I would be like, and my parents would be like, Becca, like you need a job. Like you can't just do that. And then the interviews that I went in for this job, I was like, it was very casual, very like be who you are. Like I said some things that I was like, but it was like very authentic. And they they got it. And I was like, your energy is great.
Yes.
And I was like, this is the job that I want. And so I think for me, like I'm not great at them, but I think if it's the right person, the right place, the right time, like the right thing, it'll feel good. So
I have this, I grew up as a childhood actor of all things in LA.
Are you lying?
No, I'm not lying.
What were you in?
We don't talk about those things on the podcast.
It's gonna come up. We've been
So
saying that.
I'm back to improv.
Yeah. Growing up in that like audition scene of like constantly it's basically an interview. Like an audition is an interview. You're trying to sell yourself to a casting director in a very short period of time. So like interviews, podcasting, you've brought up improv. Maybe I get into improv. Who knows? I like,
I'm joking.
I like love that. I don't know what it is, but like the uncomfortable feeling of like a first interview, I always crush them. I don't know what it is.
I think there's your next business venture. How to succeed in an interview. I would take your course.
Wow. This is actually good. You know, my friend Hannah, she's been asking for a lot of tips. She's starting like an online course for like holistic medicine and in therapy and all this. Maybe that's my next venture, is becoming a interview coach.
Honestly, everyone needs a job.
Yep. Wow. Endless supply. I like where your head's at. Anyways, we are coming up here on an hour and a half.
Yeah.
This is our longest episode yet.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. This has been so much fun.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times I'm like interviewing people and it's like getting a little dry and it's like, okay, like this is great. We reached our hour mark. Like, good. I could go for like another 2 hours and like
We love that.
keep ripping and roaring. So thank you very much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm Becca Blue Rose on Instagram, and I'm the Blue Rose Podcast on Spotify and Apple Music.
Amazing. Well, episode 7, Falling Off the Floor, complete. Bop!
Bye.
Bye! Bye.